Light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome, I am Sister Who. I have always been an anomalous person, not that I've tried to be. I guess mostly I decided not to hold it all in and to let my creativity out, and that if in spite of all my best efforts and best intentions and working very hard at it, I still find myself to be an anomaly, maybe I'm headed in the wrong direction, and I should simply make it the most beautiful and talented example of a person that I can be, instead of trying to be something I'm not for the sake of other people's expectations and categorization. The challenging thing in that, I guess, is that there are so many disparate pieces to weave together, all of which explains why when I was in college, one of the songs I worked on writing and finally crafted out, it's simply called I Am Who I Am. Teddy bears and building blocks, matchbox cars and fossil rocks, and dreams of what my life would be in time. Learning how to read and write, to ride my bike and fly a kite, and how much can be done with just a dime. Being told the world is black and white, and everything is either wrong or right. But what does all this mean? It's all a part of who I am, the paths I've walked, the place I stand, the feelings that stir within my heart. I won't consent to live a lie. I won't just go away and die. I'll smile and laugh and then reply. I am who I am. Never cry and be a man. Make all the money that you can, and never question why. Choose your friends most carefully, and make decisions prayerfully, and never tell a lie. So they say, but do not do. Who then shall I listen to? And what does all this mean? It's all a part of who I am, the paths I've walked, the place I stand, the feelings that stir within my heart. I won't consent to live a lie. I won't just go away and die. I'll smile and laugh and then reply. I am who I am. I've felt the ocean at my feet and climbed the mountain's rocky peak and taken time to gaze upon the stars. I've journeyed far across the sea and held on to my dreams for me and written songs to play on my guitar. Still I'm learning more, it seems, of how many ways there are to be. But what does all this mean? It's all a part of who I am, the paths I've walked, the place I stand, the feelings that stir within my heart. I won't consent to live a lie. I won't just go away and die. I'll smile and laugh and then reply. I am who I am. I am who I am. I am who I am. I don't remember who told me first. Somewhere along the way when I was a child, I developed the understanding that everything I would ever do, there was a sense in which I would be signing my name to it by the fact that I did it. And I didn't appreciate the name I was born with because it gave me the initials FU, but the understanding of having a name that is my name and eventually changing my name and having a name that I am proud to call my own, and that I'm very careful about what I sign my name to. And in trying to problem solve and deal with all the challenges of life that followed by being this combination of so many diverse things and this receptacle of all this bad advice that didn't really work for me. And of course, somewhere along the way with living in this age of economic obsession, people would say, well, the answer to everything is simply to get a good job. Just get a job. As if you could just go pick one out of a basket someplace. And I kept finding that as I applied for different jobs, everyone was impressed with my intelligence and my work ethic and how reliable I was and how honest I was, and yet somehow I didn't quite fit in to the very peculiar combination of personalities in their company or office space or whatever it was. And so while they liked me, they didn't want to pay me. They didn't want me to work with them. A few times they gave me a job they thought was very difficult, and I finished it so far ahead of schedule that they had nothing more for me to do. And I would have thought that that would make me sufficiently valuable to want to keep me around, but they didn't. And as I went through this whole system, I mean, the United States of America is very much under a capitalistic business system right now. But there are very few people looking at the shortcomings of that system, that no matter how you do it, you are still going to wind up with certain problems. You know, among them is that it's not just a question of what you envision and what you believe in, talking yourself into a particular position, because you may find yourself getting into a good paying position that has nothing to do with who you are. And consequently, you may make a lot of money, but you will be fundamentally unhappy. Which is why there are still very, very wealthy people who still commit suicide, because there is an emptiness inside that should be filled with the beauty and the substance of themselves, and instead it is filled with the emptiness of reaching and grasping for the approval of related to other people's expectations. The business world comes to a community and says, these are the jobs we have to offer. And ideally, the community should respond, these are the types of individuals we have available. Value our individuals. Pay attention to what they need, rather than expecting us to accommodate everything you need and adapt our whole way of life to your systems and your hierarchies and so forth. In an agrarian community, for example, if there were an agrarian community in which you had 100% farmers, and farmers worked hard and everybody was more or less equal, dealing with the same sorts of challenges, is there enough rain, did the crops come up, are there too many locusts this year, whatever. And there was a sort of equality in it because people were measured by the ways they supported their community. Even if they couldn't go out in the field, they could watch the children while other people did the work in the field. With the introduction of the industrial age and business and the corporate model, if you will, there is now a hierarchy of the bottom level workers who assemble things on the line or who load and unload trucks. There are supervisors, and then there are managers way at the top. And so there's suddenly a hierarchy, and somebody that you worked side by side with last week may suddenly now be your boss, giving orders, and yet you know that when it comes to the particular product you're making, you may be more knowledgeable about the product than the supervisor is. There seem to be a lot of situations of that where the hierarchy is not actually paying attention to where the knowledge is and where the ability is. And people are mismatched for their jobs, but it becomes a pursuit of a paycheck instead of a pursuit of a life. And then whereas on a farm there was lots of responsibility and you were responsible for doing the work, and if you didn't, everyone could see the work hadn't been done. In a business model, because it's the company finally selling the product up here, it's very difficult to say if the product comes out badly or if it doesn't have the quality it's supposed to, who dropped the ball, who didn't do their job correctly, who was it that may have shown up and may have gotten their paycheck, but they didn't actually do the work that they said they did or that they promised to do. And when you try to address that with the company, one of the most common things in the corporate model is buck passing. That no matter what it is, whatever the problem is, well, it's not my fault, it's someone over there. And you go to the next person, well, it's not my fault, it's someone over there. And by the time you go through the whole chain, you may be right back where you started and find out that it really isn't anyone's fault, but worse yet, that no one is willing to fix the problem. No one is willing to stand behind what they sold you. And so it has become an opportunity for economic victimization instead of being conscientious about what they sign their names to. The only name that signs its name to the product is the company's name. It's as if the names of the people don't matter anymore. And it becomes ultimately a dehumanizing sort of system. If someone wanted to humanize a business, I suppose, they would still have additional challenges, which is where I come back to saying we need a new system. We just need a new system. Because the industrial, corporate, technological, capitalistic system we have is not serving anyone well. It's shoveling all the money toward the top for people who really don't know how to do the jobs from which they're profiting. If all of the bottom level workers disappeared and only the managers were left, they would not have the knowledge or the experience or the expertise to keep their own company going. The other fundamental problem with capitalism is that it always expects to get more out than it put in. There's always a markup. So we pay the workers this much, well, that's one of our expenses. And then we pay managers this much, well, that's an expense. And then once we figure out all of the actual cost of producing something, then we have to still do a markup on top of that because we have to have a profit to show the shareholders. And then it goes out to the customer. Well, the customer happens to be the one who works in the factory, but it has now been marked up that many times before it came back around to them. And so you have a diminishing circle where the people who make the goods can't afford to buy them, because no one is paying attention to the fact that economics is ultimately a closed circle. We don't trade with other planets. There's a point at which there's no one left to victimize, no one else's goods to take, and we have to come up with a balanced system that is a closed circle where any person at any point around the circle has the ability to survive because they are all valued equally. That it's not a question of managers being more important than workers or workers being more important than managers, but of saying as and living as if we believe it, that everyone matters. That the person who does the basic production needs to be able to meet their needs, and the person who organizes all the information and manages the production needs to meet their needs. But it's all equal because we're all part of the same circle. It's not that anyone is more or less important than anyone else. As an individual, they would say to me, well, you just need to conform to what we want and ignore what you are. Well, at some point, I will run out of time because this body's not designed to be immortal. And I have met so many people over the years also who spend their entire adult lives doing something they hate just for the sake of a paycheck, just so they could stay alive in order to go back to work and serve the whole system that much longer. And they've never really done anything they wanted to do. They finally retire to do what they want to do finally on their retirement income. And the next year, well, one gentleman I know, 12 months after he retired, developed cancer and died within the following year. He had spent his entire adult life serving a company, only to find that he didn't have any life left to do his own living, to share what was uniquely in him that his job did not bring out. There is treasure within each person. And the more we get into a technological age where computers and robots are doing work for us, the more we have to create a system that does not depend upon people working all the time. I saw a very report just the other day, in fact, that was measuring how hard people work around the world, and came to find out that people in the United States actually do work harder than anywhere else in the world. That in terms of the length of the work week and the amount that they're paid and the quality of life that they enjoy. All of this points toward a new system because we're these combinations of different things, and we don't want to create a world in which it's unfit to live. When I was in high school, I believe it was, high school or college, I think it was high school, one of my classes was doing a study of past cultures and of saying who really won, because all of them are gone. But the example that the teacher put forward was the contrast between the Athenians and the Spartans. The Spartans essentially oriented their entire society around the military, everyone learning how to fight and be a warrior and do battle and so forth, and because that was where all their priorities were, their houses and their architecture and their cities were very, very basic, very pragmatic, very utilitarian. There was nothing creative, there was no beauty, there was no music or dance or any of the fine arts. Athenians, on the other hand, excelled in architecture and philosophy and poetry and literature and music, and made life as well-rounded as possible. But it was fascinating to me in talking about them that for the Athenian, it was just as important to be expert in military strategy as it was to be expert in poetry. That they saw that as making the well-rounded person, or in before I completely overlook it, the well-rounded man, because one of the major shortcomings of Athenians, which makes no sense to me, how could you be that involved in music and art and literature and poetry and theater and yet still view women as possessions rather than as persons in their own right? how could one be so artistic and so in touch with the things of the spirit and yet be so blind to the contribution that women could make if they were simply respected as being legitimate persons, not just for the work that they could provide, but for the very unique perspective that they brought to everything they did and still do. The very unique perspective that having someone completely different there to say, well, but what about this? But what about that? I guess it even raises the question, would Athenians have been as creative as they were if it were not for the mothers teaching the little boys as they grew up? Not that women are always more creative than men, but there seems to be a sensitivity and a creativity that women have more often than in men. But again, I'm not trying to create a hierarchy. I'm trying to say a person is a person is a person. And I am ashamed of the Athenians for not valuing their women adequately, but I am proud of the Athenians for having integrated theater and art and architecture and poetry and music. And going back to this high school class presenting the two cultures, they basically said that if you try to find the Spartan architecture, there's nothing left but a few stones sitting in a field. But if you go look for the remnants of the Athenian culture, we still even now have the remnants of the Parthenon and other column structures that are considered absolute architectural wonders. What makes the whole thing, the irony, I guess, they always say when you point your finger at somebody else, you've got three more pointing back at you. In being so, certain people being so proud of our progress over time, that we don't live in columned open structures, we have plumbing and electricity and technology and computers and yada yada yada, and yet the Athenian structures have stood for 2,000 to 3,000 years. The Spartan ones have crumbled into nothing. When I was in high school taking a class in housing and interiors, we were specifically told that the way houses are built now, they're not expected to last more than 50 years. That before all of the wood and everything begins falling apart. That is not the way people built in the past. But that is what is expected by a capitalistic system that plans on replacing everything that is. This, what is actually called planned obsolescence, that we make more cars because this one is only designed to last this many years, and then you'll have to buy a new one. And it becomes a kind of slavery, an endless treadmill, instead of allowing humanity to move further and further in its understanding of beauty and of poetry and of art and literature and foreign languages and the possibilities of exploring outer space and eventually coming up with discoveries that would allow us to travel to other planets and hopefully learn from them rather than immediately seeking to conquer them. Boy, I hope we outgrow that notion before we ever get to another planet. I'm kind of afraid we won't, but I really hope we do. But the point, I guess, that I want to keep coming back to here is that there's individuals that have infinite potential and infinite diversity, or infinite diversity and infinite combination is the way Star Trek put it. That's where the real value of humanity lies, not in its business systems, not in its capitalism, not in its accumulation of wealth. It is the ways in which we learn to nurture each other and thereby to nurture ourselves and begin to move in a positive direction beyond anything of which capitalism or business or the corporate model could conceive. It's not about avoiding responsibility, it's about embracing it not as you're the one to blame, but embracing responsibility in the sense of because I am responsible, I can do. Because I can do, I can be responsible. because I can be responsible for this step, maybe I can invent one even after that, and another one after that, and another one after that. Because I can be responsible, I have the ability to cause good things to happen. Because the buck stops here, so to speak, and I can answer your question, and I can be responsible, and I can stand behind my work, and the fact that I sign my name to it means that I'm not going to pretend that I didn't do it. I'm going to make sure that you have a good experience with it, and if you don't, I'm going to give you your money back. And I'm going to help you find what you need, even if I'm not the one who can provide it. Because that's what it means to be human. The economic systems are created to serve humanity, not vice versa. And if it has gotten reversed, we have allowed an insidious kind of slavery to develop that needs to be battled with at least as much passion and determination as the battle of the Civil War within the United States. Understanding that it was fundamentally not a battle for or against slavery, but a battle for a way of life, that is the kind of battle we need to be fighting. That this is a battle, and it won't be fought with bullets and guns and bombs. It'll be fought with words, and it'll be fought with presence. It'll be fought with standing together and saying, everyone matters. Everyone matters, and it's time to live like that really were true. It is a battle, it's just not a particularly bloody or violent battle. But in terms of the interior landscape, the psychology and the emotions, the anguish, the depression, the struggle, the pain, the anxiety, and also the celebration and joy of when things go really wonderfully, wonderfully right. To be able to say, I am who I am, and know that that's a good thing. Thank you very much for watching.